Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. Today we are doing the weekly CTF, and that is ArchAngel. So this is a fun box that Tryhackme has. It's an easy box. I would say it's an easy box if you've ever done LFI. If you haven't done LFI, you're probably not going to think it's easy, but it is a pretty easy box. So let's go ahead and get into it. If you guys like the content, if you guys are new here, hit that like button, hit that sub button. Either way, let me know, because we do these every week, and if you want to join in on the fun, what we do is every week we release a box. Well, we don't release it. Tryhackme already has them out there. We decide on a box, and then we go through and we actually do it through the week. And then on Saturday nights, I live stream and I cover the box. So let's go ahead and get into it. First one, deploy the box. Easy. Okay, get a shell. So we got to find a different host name. Well, I already did the nmap scan, and yes, I know this is not an nmap scan that you normally would do. You're not going to get very good results here, but I already knew it had port 80 open because they told me it's a HTTP server, so I didn't really need to do one, especially when it tells you it's web exploitation, privilege escalation, LFI. We know pretty much what we're going to be doing, so let's go ahead and hop into it. Let's go to HTTP 10.10.240.151. Okay, so right off the bat, we've got Wave Fire. Sorry, I had to take a sip out of my stuffy mug there. All right. And that's not a merch promo because that merch is not available anymore. Okay, so right off the bat, we have, doesn't seem like we have a lot, but the first question says find a different host name. So this is where I see a lot of people that haven't done many real life pen testing or web exploitation. They don't understand this part. This is where you see experience kind of take over for a lot of people. When they say find a different host name, some people might say, what does that even mean? The reality is this web server might be hosting multiple websites. It doesn't have to host just one. And the only way to know or to actually access that is to call it by host, by name. So we have mafialive.thm right here. That tells me that there is a domain name named mafialive.thm, but I wonder if we can access it. Now, I would do some DNS recon here normally, but they're giving it to us kind of, so let's see what we can find. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to open my Etsy host file. If I can see, there we go. Hosts. Okay. I thought I clicked it. There we go. And I'm just going to add it. So I'm going to say 10.10.240.151. Now what this does is now when I ask for that host name, it knows to go to that IP address and ask for it. So now we're going to say, I think it's Mafia Live, mafialive.thm. We're going to go ahead and save that. Now we can go here. We can say HTTP mafialive.thm. Okay, interesting. Right off the bat, THM found the right host name. So the first thing I noticed is it says under development. Why is that even a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because that tells me right off the bat that this website's probably not complete, or it's probably not, it's probably a dev server, which means we probably have some vulnerabilities. Maybe we have some stuff that's in plain text because they haven't encrypted it yet, etc., etc. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep doing a little recon. So I'm going to go, by the way, there's the first flag under development right there. Make sure you guys can see it. Okay. And that's the first flag. So now it says look for a page under development, which I actually think they did a really poor job of wording that, because if I looked at that, I'm like, well, this literally says under development, and I wouldn't have guessed that it's a different website, but obviously when you put it in, it doesn't work. You know it's a different website. So the first thing I'm going to do is just use GoBuster. Now, we're going to use dir for directories we're going to be looking for. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the TACX PHP because it's a PHP site, and I want to see if I can find a PHP file because the website's going to be listed as PHP. Now, you may say, how do you know this? I don't right off the bat. I would normally sit there and do a couple, and I would do different enumeration techniques. But because I do know this, because we've done it, I don't have to do that. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to do the Mafia Live, And then I'm just going to say, what word list am I going to use? On this box, this is the attack box. We're going to say user share, word lists, dirbuster, common, super quick list. And we're just going to say which ones are common. Now, right off the bat, you get your typical 403 errors, but you do get, on here, you get 200 error on test PHP. Okay, interesting. So let's try it. Test.php. Okay, so we do actually have a hidden directory, if you will. Sorry guys, I've not been feeling so hot, so I'm sipping tea. So we'll just deal with it. All right. So now we go ahead and obviously there's a button. Now, I'll tell you in a CTF, I do this because I want you guys to grow and learn. In a CTF, 100%, what are we going to do? We're all going to do it. Click that freaking button, right? In real world, don't just click things to find out what they do. Reach out to whoever you're pen testing with, blah, blah. The reason for that is there are times where you can do certain things that break servers. For instance, let's just say this was an input and you were pinging it to see if you could run a command. Well, if you run a command or run a ping and it just runs forever, you might have just DOSed that server and not even realize because it's just going to never stop and you can't stop it now, right? Things like that. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to unclick it. Control is an illusion, which if you've ever seen Mr. Robot, that's a Mr. Robot quote. It also is called Mr. Robot PHP. But there's one thing we noticed right off the bat. And by the way, I'm just starting this while we talk so we don't have to sit here and wait. But there's one thing I noticed right off the bat, and that's that it redirected us. You see it's got the view, var, www, HTML. Well, that's what LFI stands for, local file inclusion. So we can see this is a local file, meaning it is on the server, right? This isn't reaching out to another site and showing us the contents. It is on this server. So what that tells me is, well, maybe I can actually change this and do whatever server I wanted or whatever file I want, right? Maybe I could do, instead of this, I could say, I want Etsy. Okay, thanks. I want Etsy password. Oh, that's not allowed. Interesting. So that tells me something right there. Now, a lot of you may look at this and say, well, yeah, that tells us it didn't work, right? But I look at that and say, well, they thought about this. Meaning they put specific parameters in there to prevent me from doing what I just did because that's a custom error. So what's that tell me? That maybe they missed some. Maybe I can get around that. So let's go back. And this is where you'd have to kind of mess with, and I say mess with, a lot of people have LFI checklists where they're going through and they're checking to see what works and what doesn't. And that's where you'd have to go through this. Now, I'm not going to make you guys sit through all of that because it's just a trial and error. But what we are going to do is I'm going to show you guys the one that does work. So there's actual multiple ones that will work. First off, we can get rid of MrRobot.php because that's what's actually running. And we can say, okay, what if we want to go back, right? We want to read the Etsy password file. So we go back. Now, what I'll tell you is there's a couple ways to do this. You can actually just do 2 slashes. It acts the same. And that'll take you all the way back to the root directory, right? And then we can say Etsy password. And all this is doing is it's sanitizing it, but it's not sanitizing what we're doing. And so we can actually read the Etsy password file. You can see there's the Etsy password file. Now there's other ways to do this. And if any of you have ever done this, and I'll show you the other ways once we get to that point, because we'll read the file and actually see how they're sanitizing it. And then I can kind of walk you through some of the other ways that we could do it too. But this is just trial and error, right? There's one thing, you had to leave this here, the var www HTML development testing, and then go back. The other thing to look at is you also had to do something with the slashes. And the reason I say something is because I'll show you that there's other methods. But so now we have access to the file, right? So let's go back and let's go and view this page source. Okay, and we see that MrRobot.php is running, but when we click it, it just shows us control is an illusion. It's not doing anything for us, right? We're not getting anything, but we know the location of that MrRobot.php because we want to know what is it doing. When I click that button, what is it doing? I want to read it, and I can read files on the server now. We saw that. So how do I read it? Well, all we're going to do, and by the way, you can find, if you just search LFI cheat sheet, you'll get all of these. It's very easy. So all we're going to do is we're actually going to go through here and we're going to say, okay, we want to take this PHP, and you can see the view. We'll get rid of that. Okay, and we're going to say PHP, right? And then we'll say, and this is a very common, by the way, convert. Now, what's happening is it's trying to sanitize and not allow us to look at that file, because every time, because think about it, when we're clicking on it, we're running the file. We're running that PHP script. We don't want to run it. We want to read it. So we're going to say filter, convert, base 64. And all we're doing is converting it to base 64 so that we can actually view it and not have any special characters, anything like that being removed. And then it's going to say resource. So now what resource do we want to do it with? And this is the var www HTML develop. Am I spelling development right? Development. What was the whole thing here? It was development and then testing. That's what it was. Development underscore testing. And then from there, it's just the test.php. Now, one thing I want to point out is some people may say, well, why did that work if you had to sanitize it before, right? Like, you remember we had to sanitize it. We had to have this var in there and have the slashes and all that. Well, I'll show you. So we hit it and we get this all encoded here, right? So we say copy A. We'll open up CyberChef real quick. Put this in here. We'll just get rid of the test page. And we'll say from base 64. Maybe. And we'll take a look at it. Now, one thing to look at here, you can see we have the flag. Let me make sure you guys can see it. So you can see we have in here, we have the flag, and it says Tryhackme exploiting LFI. So there's the flag, and that's actually flag 2. And then you can see, look for a page under development. It was test.php. But you can see, here's where it's telling us what they are actually sanitizing. And you can read it, and it says, if it contains the string var www HTML development testing. Well, that's why it worked when we did the PHP filter, because the resource we're using is the var www HTML development testing. So as long as that's in there, it will allow you to go to the next. Otherwise, it'll say, sorry, that's not allowed. The other thing you're looking at, if you see, is right here. You're not allowed to type ... /... That's what, if it contains that, it will say, hey, no, not doing that. So that's how they're sanitizing it. So that tells us, for one, we were able to do that and exfil it. And then it says, sorry, that's not allowed. We get the flag. But the reason that's important is that we actually are able to view the code and see what we need to do. Now, if we keep deep diving into this, we'll go back, okay? So we've got it figured out now, right? We've got the code, we've got the, and it tells you, what was it called? LFI, exploiting LFI, yeah. So we're gonna exploit LFI to get a shell is what we're going to do. And that's what it's kind of hinting at, right? But the big thing was, we saw what they're sanitizing for. That's really important because we need to know what can we actually do. So remember I showed you what we could do, the backslashes, double backslashes, or double forward slashes, excuse me. We could also, because all it's doing is asking us to not do that, not put period, period, slash, period, period. So what if we did period, period, slash, period, slash, period, period, slash, period, slash, period, period, slash. Now, this is the same thing. Why is it the same thing? Because if you know Linux and you know it well, you know that period, period means go back a directory, and period means this directory. So all I'm saying is go back a directory, stay in this directory, go back a directory, stay in this directory, go back a directory, stay in this directory. It's the same thing. I can just keep doing that. Now, I'm not going to do that, but I'm just saying there are other methods to the LFI piece that you can do if you want. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go through and we just look up LFI cheat sheets or anything with LFI exploitation, and you'll find quickly to get a shell, you need to poison the logs in this case. So what's that mean? Well, I'll show you. So first let's turn on Burp Suite. I opened Burp Suite over here. Okay, so here's Burp Suite. We got our proxy on. Make sure it's on because I had it off earlier. Okay, we'll just hit this button so that we get that in there. Okay, I send it to repeater. You don't have to. I just like to send it to repeater. Okay, so now we have here. Let me make sure you guys can see because sometimes I block it and I try not to. Okay, I'm going to put my camera down here for you guys. Okay, so now all we're going to do is we're going to look at this, what we have here first, and where can we inject this, right? Keep in mind, the Apache logs is what we're trying to get to run our PHP code. So we can actually change, first thing we can do if we wanted to is we could actually read the PHP log file, right? And see what is it logging. That's the first thing, but we already know what it's logging because we've seen it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, and when I say we've seen it, I mean we did research on this, right? So remember, we have to have this development testing. So we get rid of Mr. Robot.php, right? And then we just do our regular LFI. And we can say log Apache to access log, right? This is the access log. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, show me this access log. Let's go ahead and review it. And we didn't get anything. There we go. Okay, we got it back. So you can see we get the access logs. Well, why is that important? Because we want to see what is the access log showing. Okay, it's showing us the header. It's showing us the error. Where the website. Ooh, it's got the user agent in there. What's that mean? That means we can actually run PHP code here under the user agent. Now, there's only one way to test this, and that testing it is doing it, right? So what we can do is we can actually take this user agent and get rid of the Mozilla Firefox, all that jazz, right? And what's going to happen is we're going to put code in there, and when we put code in there, excuse me, then when we call the log, we'll see the command we ran in there. And I'll show you what I mean. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, wrong one. We're going to say PHP, right? Because we want to run PHP code. We're going to say system. And we want to run system commands. So we say system get, and this is a very common PHP script, so you can easily go look this up anywhere. And then you just say CMD. You can put whatever you want here. This is going to be the variable that we're going to be calling upon. So then we just say okay. And then we just got to close, whoops. Then we just got to close it out. So we just say all right. So make sure that's closed out. I put the wrong thing there. So see, this is why you double check your stuff. There we go. So now all we have to do is under this access log is say and tell it what command we want. And CMD equals, right? Well, CMD can equal whatever we want here. We can put, let's just put here, who am I? Whoops. Who am I? Right? And then that command will be inserted here when it runs. So now we hit send and we should get the logs, and you'll see at the bottom of the log, it'll always be the last one. Okay, the log is full now. Okay, and let's see if we can find it. Okay, sometimes you have to hit it twice, by the way, because it hasn't gotten into the log yet, just FYI. Okay, so we go back down. Dang, this thing has 9,000 of them. But you can see right there, I said, who am I? Look at what it says, www data. So the command worked. So that's awesome. That means we have command access. We can run commands. All right, so now that we know we can run commands, obviously we're going to want to run a shell, right? Well, all we need to do is, I really wish it didn't have 9,000 results there, because when I did this before, it only had like 50 and it was very easy to scroll down, but this is going to take a while. So now all we have to do is upload, or have it upload a shell for us, and I'll show you what I mean. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off Burp Suite, because I don't need, not turn it off, but turn off the proxy because I don't need it right now. Now, if any of you guys have ever used the attack box before, and used it for an extended period, I should say, then you'll know that there's actually the Pentest Monkey's reverse PHP shell, the most common PHP shell out there, is actually on this box at all times. So you just go to, I'm just going to copy it. So copy, user, share, and then web shells, and then PHP, and then I think it's just PHP reverse shell. Yeah, I'm just going to copy it into my current directory and say PHP reverse shell.php. And there it is. So the reason that's important is we're going to go and say Python 3 tackm http.server. So we're going to host this. So now it's sitting there at our IP, which is 10.10.121.148, right? And we're going to sit there, and then we're going to say, okay, let's go back here. And the command we're going to run is going to be wget, because we want to get that PHP server or script, right? So we're going to say wget. Now, one thing you have to do is you have to put %20. If you guys have never done URL encoding, this is what it is. The command wget is wget space the website. Well, you can't put a space here because the command will stop at the space. So we do %20 and it reads it just like an actual space. So we say HTTP and then the 10.10, what was our 10.10, 121, 148, 121, 148, and then we want to say port, and our port was 8,000, I believe. Let me make sure. Yep, 8,000, and then 8,000, and then PHP reverse shell.php, right? So all we're doing is we're telling the server to reach out and get this reverse shell. Now what we'll do is you'll see when I push it here, you'll see this should, if we did it right, you should see it actually grab it. So we say send, and look at that. See how it got it? It went and got it. So why is that important? Because that means it worked. Now, I did that just to show you. We have to actually change that reverse shell. So make sure you didn't just do that because it won't do anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up a new tab. We're going to say, okay, PHP reverse shell. So we're going to open that up with Sublime. You can open it with whatever text editor you want. This is just the one that's always on here. Go home, PHP reverse shell. We have to actually put in here the port that we want, which 1234 is fine. I don't care what port you use. I'll use 1234 for this. And then you just put your IP. So we'll say 10, 10, 121, 148. Now we'll save this, but we're going to save this one a little bit differently. We're just going to save it as PHP reverse shell 1. The reason for that is I need to upload it again to the server just to show you. All we have to do is go back here and say, whoops, 1. Now here, I'm going to actually stop it and restart it because I want to make sure that that second one's in there. So now we're going to reach out and grab PHP reverse shell 1, and you'll see the same thing. We hit send. And you see it did the GET request. It got it. Perfect. Easy. Now we set up our listener, netcat lvnp 1234. Now that that's listening, all we have to do is go back to our website. Didn't want to open a new one. Want to go back here and get rid of that. And instead of test.php, we can just say PHP reverse shell 1.php, and when we hit enter, no, you got to actually do this. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but if you actually see that HTTP, if you don't send it with HTTP, it doesn't work. So reverse, it was PHP reverse shell. So if you guys get that, just go back and make sure HTTP is in there first. And then, okay, so this one says failed to daemonize. That's because I did not put the 1 there, so it doesn't actually have anywhere to go. So we'll say 1, hit enter. See how it's caught up? Look at that. We have a shell. That seems pretty crazy, right? We got a shell. So now we can just say ls cd home ls cd ArchAngel ls cat user.text. Okay, there it is. Tryhackme LFI to remote code execution is tricky. Okay, so now we're on to the next one. So that's the find the root user flag. So now, who are we? Let's see who we are. Okay, we're www data. We're not ArchAngel. So that means we should probably go to ArchAngel, right? At least I would think. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually upgrade this shell, because if you notice, like I go to type and I hit backspace, that's fine. But if I go to type and then I go to hit arrow keys, I get crappy those things. So I'm going to actually upgrade this with a one-liner that I keep around in my Patreon notes. And I'm just going to say import pty, and then you just say pty.spawn, and then bin bash, and then you just pretty much close it out. There you go. Okay, and now we are in. We were in before, but now we have a much more stable shell that's a lot better. Okay, so now we don't have to worry about it closing and all that crap. So there's multiple ways to upgrade shells. My Patreon notes have multiple ways too. So if you don't like the Python one, then feel free to use one of the others. Okay, so now we go ahead and we say ls, and we see that we actually have a secret. So we cat secret. Okay, so we can't cat the secret, so that's unfortunate. Okay, well, let's go ahead and do our typical privilege escalation techniques, and one of the first I'm going to do is the etc cron tab. Oh, interesting. Every minute, ArchAngel runs with the opt hello world.sh. So let's go to cd opt ls tech la, and look at the hello world, and it looks like we have write permissions to it. That means we can pretty much write whatever we want to it, which is really nice. So let's make sure our listener's set up, because we're going to need another listener. We can just go ahead and close this one. You can say netcat lvmp, and this one we're going to use 4444, which is the Metasploit default, but that's all right. Okay, so now all we have to do is pretty much go in here and add a reverse shell to the back of the file, to the append it, right? So all we have to do is say echo bash, and this is just, again, a one-liner that's in there that is in my Patreon notes. I keep all my shortcuts in there. Dev tcp, and then 10.10.121.148, and then the port, which is, we're doing 4444 in this case, and then we just say 0, and then we just say and 1, and we're going to actually put all of that in the bottom or back of hello world.sh. Now I recommend you do this, you set up your listener first. The reason is, the last time I did it, I actually started it or did this, and almost instantly it flagged. So just be ready for it is what I'm saying. Okay, so we did that. It's in there. Now this is listening, so it may take a second because it runs every minute. So now we just wait and we see if we get a shell. And if we didn't, we probably messed something up, which is fine. There we go. We just got a shell with ArchAngel. Okay, so now we can go, and if you remember, ArchAngel has this secret file that we can access, and in there is the user2.txt. There you go. So the next one is Tryhackme horizontal privilege escalation using cron. Okay, huge flag for little reward. Now, all we have to do is get root, which sounds complex, sounds hard, but look at what they give us. So we're in the secret file. There's a backup. I talk about it all the time. If you have a CTF and they give you a file in the directory, probably a reason it's in there. So we can go to cat backup. Okay, so it's a compiled language, that's fine. So no big deal. Let's just do strings on it and see if we get anything. Okay, scroll up. Let's see. Oh, right here. We have copy, home, user, blah, 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 blah. One thing to notice, they did not put a direct path in copy. What does that mean? It means they did a relative path, meaning when you type CP, it's going to go to bin CP, right? It's going to look for it. Well, where's it going to look for? That's the question, right? And the answer is, we don't know. Let's find out. So what we do is we say echo path. And you can see this is where it's going to look. It's going to go into user local sbin first. And it's going to say, hey, is there a CP in here or a copy? And if it's not, it's going to go, okay, is there one in user local bin? No. Okay, is there one in sbin bin? No. Okay, is there one here? And it's going to use whatever one is there. Well, what we can do is we can actually edit that path. So when we edit that path, we can actually say, we want you to do whatever we want. So we say export, and then we just say path equals, right? Because we're exporting the path, and we want you to use the present working directory. We want you to use the path that we're in currently, okay? And the reason for that is because that's where we're going to put our stuff. So now we did that. Now we do the same echo path, right? And you see, look, the first one they're going to check is home ArchAngel secret. So if there's a CP in ArchAngel secret, it runs that first. So right off the bat, all we have to do, this is super easy, is just say, hey, we're going to echo bin bash. We're going to make a little bash script, and we're going to name it CP, right? Easy. Now we just echo, and what are we going to do with the bin bash script? We're just going to say bin bash. We want a bash shell. That's it, right? And now we just add it to the end of it. Perfect. So now we have this little bash script that all it does is run a shell, and we say change mod. We got to add executable on it to CP. Okay. So now pretty much we're done. All we got to do now is run the backup, and backup is ran. If you look, if we go to ls-tac-la, backup is owned by root, so it's going to be ran as root. So when we go in here, okay, let's try it. So we say run backup. It doesn't look like it did anything, huh? Well, let's type who am I? Oh, look at that. We got another shell that sucks. So we could upgrade this and go through it and all that, but we don't have to, because we can actually just go to cd root, and there's the root.txt, and boom, there's your box is done. Tryhackme path variable exploitation for vertical privilege escalation. Easy done. So it is an easy box if you break it down by each byte of information. It gets harder when you're looking at it as a whole and when you're diving into each piece as a whole. What I mean by that is when you're looking at the whole box and you're like, you had to do this, 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 and this, it looks hard. But the privilege escalation is super easy. It's exactly what almost every CTF does. The LFI is super easy. It's just hard for people that have never used LFI or even RFI or anything like that. So let me know what you guys think in this. If you guys think it's not an easy box, because I've heard that it's not, let me know in the comments and tell me what you think. What do you think it should be? If you think it should be hard, please tell me, because I'd like to hear that. You might have a valid argument. I'd like to hear it. So let me know what you guys think, and hopefully you guys have a great day and start your new year off right. Thanks, guys.